Welcome back into Sportsmemo's betting podcast, college football, every game on the board, segment number 2 with Mid-Major Matt. Mid-Major Matt, welcome to the pod. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm excited to tackle week 4 of the college football season.
Absolutely. Let's get right into it, guys. And we're going 325 to 350 on this segment with Mid-Major Matt on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt. Check his stuff out. Good Twitter follow. We got Temple at Buffalo, seeing a total of 53 here, Matt. With Temple, tough spot here, but minus 14 on the road.
Yeah, this is a game that's probably going to be on my card. I haven't decided yet which direction or the total, but this is a very interesting game for me. I'll give you some information. Temple coming off the headline win against Maryland at home. The defense looked absolutely incredible in that one. They were basically able to hold Maryland out several times in goal line stands. The offense wasn't that great. Meanwhile, you've got a Buffalo team that's 1-2. They lost to Penn State week 2. That's expected to happen. The loss last week to Liberty on the road wasn't exactly expected. They were a favorite on the road. I think Liberty is a better team than people give them credit for. And then week 1, they did not cover the massive number against Robert Morris. This is not as good of a team as it was last year, but there's still some things to like about this Buffalo squad.
Next game up, Mid-Major Matt, we got 327-328 Central Michigan. The Chippewas traveling down to South Florida to take on the Miami Hurricanes. Looks like the Canes laying 29.5 at home, 48 the total in Hard Rock Stadium.
Yeah, Central Michigan, last week, I'll admit, I incorrectly faded them. Central Michigan's without their starting quarterback, Quentin Dormady. They probably will be without Jonathan Ward, their running back. If he is playing, he's going to be banged up. But that's their leading runner and their leading receiver. They scored leading quarterback and leading runner. They scored a bunch of points against Akron last week, but I learned my lesson. I'm never putting Akron on my card again. Their one game against a really big-time opponent, they lost 61-0 to Wisconsin. This feels like one of those name-your-score type of games. Miami's one of those teams that probably would like to run the score up on teams just to prove they're back. I probably won't touch this one, but Miami should roll in this one.
Absolutely, Matt. And let's head to your neck of the woods there in Virginia. Old Dominion at Virginia in Charlottesville. Looks like 28.5, just over 4 touchdowns. The Cavaliers laying at home. 46 the total, Matt.
Yeah, this is a weird one because it's a spot play potentially. I'm never going to tell anybody to take Old Dominion. They're a mediocre team. They beat Norfolk State week 1, 24-21. They lost week 2 at Virginia Tech, 31-17. I was talking to a Virginia beat reporter today, and they basically said, look, they're the better team. They're all focused on the fact that Virginia Tech lost last year to Old Dominion. The Monarchs just don't have the talent to match up. But when you look at Virginia, they're coming off a highly charged, a highly emotional game against Florida State, and they've got a huge trip to South Bend next week against Notre Dame. It is a night game on ESPN2. They don't get a ton of night games in Charlottesville, so I know they're going to want to put on a show for the crowd. But still, they could have one eye to Notre Dame, and a backdoor cover could be a possibility here.
All right, he's Mid-Major Matt on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt. Matt, you're working with ESPN there in the state of Virginia, right?
Yes, ESPN Richmond here in the state of Virginia. I have my own show from 3 to 4 weekdays, and then on the weekends, I have a show usually from 11 to noon or 11 to 11:30 that breaks down the games involving the state schools. So for that ODU Virginia game, we'll talk to reporters and play-by-play guys from both sides of the story and just kind of give you as much information as possible and some gambling flair as well.
All right, good stuff. It's in the state of Virginia, and you want to try Mid-Major Matt's service out. We have his 7-day all access at sportsmemo.com for only $99. You can get it for $49, under $50, 7 days all access, every sport he handicaps for only $49 using the coupon code MMM49. That's MMM49 at checkout for his 7-day all access pass at sportsmemo.com. Next game up, heading to the mid-majors. Coastal Carolina as the Chanticleers laying 16.5 on the road at UMass. 61.5 the total, Matt.
Coastal Carolina 2-1 on the season. They beat Norfolk State 46-7. They have the road win at Kansas 12-7 in week 2. They lost by 7 at home to Eastern Michigan 30-23. I mean, I think the Coastal Carolina team is very solid. They're not spectacular. You know, Fred Payton is a decent quarterback. They do some things well. They do some other things not well. That's not the case for UMass. They're 0-3. They lost 48-21 at Rutgers. They lost 45-20 to FCS team Southern Illinois, and they lost 52-17 at Charlotte. I'll never tell anybody, as usual, to lay that many points on the road, but I certainly won't be going to the window and betting UMass. This is arguably the worst team in the country.
What about total-wise, Matt? Seeing this 61-62 range, UMass can't stop anybody. Their defense is likely the worst unit in all of college football. However, they got Walt Bell as the offensive coordinator. We all saw him in the Sun Belt, what he was able to do with Arkansas State. Plus Coastal Carolina, they'll throw it around a little bit, at least to spread a wide open offense. Do you see any value here in betting the over?
If you were to go, I would go with the over, because if you look, as we said, 48, 45, and 52 were the 3 points allowed by UMass. But Coastal Carolina, the 12 points they scored at Kansas, you could see a potential situation where it's like 46-0, and then you're waiting on Coastal Carolina to keep going with their backups and their third string guys. If I thought that UMass was going to be able to contribute a lot more to this, I would probably go with the over here. But yeah, I probably won't be looking at the total in this one.
Okay, and speaking of totals, next game up in the Big Ten is a low total here. Sub 40 in college football is rarefied air, but that's the total here as the Spartans from Michigan State head to Northwestern. Seeing Northwestern catching 9.5. That's Michigan State laying 9.5 on the road. 38 the total, Matt.
Northwestern 1-1. You've got the win that they just came off of against UNLV, 30-14. Talking with somebody with UNLV, they said that Northwestern was impressive, but they still had a lot of holes. And against a better team, they probably would have been a lot closer, maybe even a loss. They lost week 1, 17-7 to Stanford. Everybody remembers that game because of the late fumble touchdown that got it to 17-7. Northwestern's known for their defense. Hunter Johnson at quarterback, he was highly touted. He was a 4 or 5-star kid that was going to go to Clemson, decides to go to Northwestern. These two teams play some close games. Northwestern won it last year at Michigan State 29-19. The year before, they won in 3 overtimes, 39-31. So they do have Michigan State's number. Sparty's coming off a very, very tough home loss against Arizona State, 10-7, which should have probably potentially been 10-10, as the Pac-12 admitted that they should have called a penalty for leaping at that final play of the game. Michigan State only put up 28 on Tulsa. They did score 51 on Western Michigan, but the low total is kind of warranted here. I would consider Northwestern as a live home dog. Last year, they were 2-0-1 against the spread as a home dog. The year before that, 2-1 as a home dog. The problem will be that there'll be a ton of Michigan State fans, and who knows how much of a home field advantage it will truly be.
Gotcha. Yeah, good point there. We got Troy at Akron up next. Sunbelt versus Maction. 57 the total. You spoke about the Zips earlier, so I'm guessing it's Trojans or pass. Are you laying the 17.5 here, Matt?
Once again, I will never tell anybody to lay as many points. I just look, the Troy is the better team, and the Troy should win this game, and they could win this game by a lot, and you could laugh at me and say you should have told them to lay the points. But more often than not, and you probably agree, when you have these big spreads on the road, there's weird things that happen that could cause the back door to ever so slightly creak open. Troy just lost B.J. Smith, the running back for the season. He's the Sun Belt preseason offensive player of the year, so they've got to do a little feeling out in terms of finding out his backup and getting him some work. Akron is horrendous. I thought Akron last week was in a good situation against the Central Michigan, and they just played horrendous. Cato Nelson's not a terrible quarterback, but there's not a lot around him. Akron doesn't play a lot of defense. It is probably Troy or nothing here. I couldn't even tell you about the over because I don't even know if Akron could contribute very much to this total.
And what was the Troy injury you brought up, Matt?
B.J. Smith, the running back, the senior running back, he is the preseason Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year. He is done for the season, so there could be a little bit of growing pains there for Troy, although we do know they do like to sling it around a little bit. But, that's a nice little injury. They beat Campbell week 1 43-14. And then they lose 47-42 last week at home to Southern Miss, a rare opportunity to get a Conference USA team at home. So who knows if they're slightly hungover. As I said, it's either Troy or nothing, but probably nothing here.
All right, Matt. We got Boston College at Rutgers up next with BC after one of the worst losses of the season so far. Minus 8.5 on the road, total of 57.5.
When you talk about mid-major football, you certainly have to bring up Rutgers. That's for sure. The big question here is who's going to be the starting quarterback for Rutgers? McLean Carter, the kid who came over as a transfer, he hit his head 2 weeks ago in Iowa. He has not been able to practice so far. He makes a bit of a difference because he's better than Artur Sikowski. This team beat Massachusetts 48-21 in week 1. They lost 30-0 at Iowa in week 2, and they're coming off a bye week. But how can you trust Boston College right now? They just lost at home 48-24 to Kansas after beating Virginia Tech, after beating Richmond. I assume we're going to get an ornery bunch in Boston College. I assume that we're going to get a sleepy atmosphere because it is a noon kickoff in Piscataway, and I can't imagine that this team gets a lot of people. But they were, the last 2 years, 7-4 against the spread as a home underdog. I can't recommend Rutgers, but I wouldn't fault you if you lean that way because I just don't know what I'm going to get from Boston College.
All right, Matt. Well, let's head to your comfort zone here. Western Michigan, talking about mid-majors versus Syracuse, your alma mater. The Orange laying 5.5 or 6, 65.5 the total.
So I'm slightly embarrassed here. This is not very often where an ACC school is less than a touchdown favorite at home against Western Michigan. Granted, the Broncos are really good. They beat up 2 opponents at home, Monmouth 48-13, Georgia State 57-10. They've got a great offense. I like a lot of pieces that Broncos have. They did lose 51-17 at Michigan State. These two teams played last year in Kalamazoo, with Syracuse winning 55-42. So maybe you look at the over. But the Orange this year just aren't scoring. Tommy DeVito has not run the offense to perfection. The running game is not doing enough between Mo Neal and Abdul Adams. The wide receivers have been a disappointment. The defense has been a bit of a disappointment. I think that this line is really short because they feel like there's going to be a hangover here. But can there really be a hangover after a hangover against Maryland? So look, I expect potentially a good crowd in Syracuse. I would hope, a good effort by Syracuse. This number's kind of short. I don't know if you could convince me to take Syracuse, but it's short for a reason because Western Michigan has the talent if Syracuse is not focused.
All right, Matt. A couple games left in this segment. We got the coupon code MMM49. That's Mid-Major Matt's 7-day all access at Sportsmemo.com for under $50, just $49, 7 days all access. MMM49 at checkout. Next game up, Ball State, another MAC team here at the ACC. North Carolina State, NC State Wolfpack laying 19.5 at home, 58.5 the total, Matt.
No offense to the MAC, but this is what you should expect when you've got an ACC team hosting a MAC school. Ball State 1-2 so far. They lost to Indiana 34-24. That was a neutral site game. Well, somewhat. It was at Indianapolis. Fordham, they beat 57-29, and then they lost at home 41-31 to Florida Atlantic. You and I talked about it last week because I believe it was in our thing that we liked the over here because we thought there was going to be a lot of points scored. Drew Plitt, as a quarterback, is slinging it around. This is a Ball State team that has some talent. You look on the NC State side, they're coming off a 44-27 loss at West Virginia, in which they kind of were brought down to earth after 2 straight victories to start the season out. There are a lot of questions to answer about NC State. I expect an angry bunch coming into this one, but they have a road game against Florida State next week. There's a chance maybe they're not as focused for this one. It's a large number here. Maybe the over is worth a look. Maybe Ball State gives up some touchdowns or maybe NC State gives up some touchdowns to Ball State, and maybe we get over the total in this one. But NC State should win and move to 3-1 on the season.
All right, Matt, a big one in the Big Ten. We got the Michigan Wolverines on the road in Camp Randall versus the Wisconsin Badgers. The Badgers laying 3.5, 44.5 the total, Matt. Who's going to be jumping around at the end of this one?
Well, I mean, look, I'll fully admit this is not my wheelhouse because it's the Big Ten. I don't do as much. Of course, I look at every game, but this is not the stuff I focused on. My thoughts from far away is Michigan's bye week came at a good time. Look, they just beat Army 24-21 in overtime. We love Army West Point. Those guys, what they do for the country and what they do for football is fantastic, and it's always tough to play for without extra time. Now they're coming on a road trip to Wisconsin, a very tough place to play. Both teams actually on a bye week. But what do we know about the Badgers? They beat South Florida 49-0. They beat Central Michigan 61-0. Neither team's offense really exactly threatens you. We know about Jonathan Taylor. We know that their quarterback situation is a little bit questionable. We know that Michigan, is a somewhat desperate team right now. Wisconsin 2 years ago beat the Wolverines 24-10 at home. They lost 38-13 at Michigan. I mean, if I had to, I'd probably lean to the home team, but with the 3.5, I mean, that half a point's going to make a difference, especially if you think it's a close game, which Michigan has played lately. So I'd pay a lot of attention to the fact if you're getting a 3 or 3.5 and what you might do with that half-point difference.
Yeah, and you can shop around, guys, and find both of those numbers. So depending on which team you're liking, there is a 3 in the hook. There's also a flat 3 there with the Badgers laying at home. We got Toledo at Colorado State up next. The Rams catching 9.5 at home. So it's the MAC team laying 9.5 here. 67 the total, man.
Well, Colin Hill went down for Colorado State, and that means something at quarterback. Their offense hasn't been bad. It hasn't been the issue. It's the defense. Their 3 line results so far is a 1-2 start, 52-31. They lost to rival Colorado. They beat Western Illinois 38-13, and then last week lost 55-34 to Arkansas. On the one hand, you're like, okay, this is great. They're scoring some points, but they're not stopping anybody. In comes Toledo, who lost 38-24 at Kentucky. They beat Murray State last week 45-0. We know what these guys can do. Brian Koback at running back is a very good running back. They've got skill position guys at Toledo. I'm not laying that many points with them on the road. They've only been a road favorite. They were twice last year when they went 1-1. Ironically, in 2017, they were a road favorite 5 times and went 4-1 against the spread. This one might be more of an over, though. If Colorado State can figure out how to get some offense going without their quarterback, the over might be worth a look.
We got New Mexico State versus New Mexico up next. The Lobos laying 4 here, Matt. 68.5 the total.
Let me tell you, when I think of great rivalries, I think of New Mexico and New Mexico State. Unfortunately, this year we only get it once. It's funny because in basketball, they always play each other twice, even though they're not in the same conference. New Mexico State, much like UMass, a terrible independent team, got crushed by Washington by 51 on the road, lost by 52 at Alabama, lost by 21 at home to San Diego State, but they've only scored 27 points this year while giving up, my math isn't very good, 151 points. In comes New Mexico. They beat Sam Houston State. We were both disappointed about that, 39-31. They lost at Notre Dame 66-14. New Mexico wants to run the ball. They want to run the ball. They want to run the ball. Last year, these two teams played a 42-25 game at New Mexico State. Could be an overlook here, but once again, can New Mexico State do enough to contribute to this total, or is it going to be New Mexico, who runs it a lot, doing most of the legwork?
Do you know what the rivalry's called, Matt?
It's, it's the Battle of I-25.
I think no. Well, at least according to Wikipedia, it's called the Rio Grande rivalry.
I did not know that. I'm looking at my Phil Steele now, and it refers to it as the Battle of I-25. Whatever it is, it's something that it's not going to be on any sort of radar for this Saturday.
All right. Well, we might have just caught Phil Steele off there, or possibly Wikipedia is wrong. So either way. It's always good to know those little rivalry names. New Mexico State versus New Mexico. Good one there. We got Washington at BYU to finish off the segment here, Matt. -6 or -6.5. That's the Huskies laying in Provo. 52.5 the total.
The things to consider here, BYU has played 3 overtimes their last 2 games. They won both games. They beat USC 30-27. They won at Tennessee 29-26 and was a loser 30-12. This team came a long way so far in a couple of weeks since that Holy War game way back in August 29th. I just wonder how much motivation they have. I wonder how much juice they have left. I wonder if, the letdown factor could happen here because they've had 3 emotionally charged games. You play Utah as a rival. That's going to be pretty big. They go to Rocky Top. There's tons of emotion in Rocky Top. And then playing USC, a game against a Pac-12 power in your building. On the other side, Washington, they have USC at home in Week 5. Possible consideration there. This team has not left home yet this year. 47-14 winner against Eastern Washington. They lost at home 2019 to Cal, and then they beat Hawaii 52-20, taking out all sorts of frustrations. This team last year was 1-3 against the spread as an away favorite. I have no play in this one, but you have to consider, A, is BYU going to be ready emotionally for this game? Can they get up for another big-time opponent? And B, is Washington very concerned about this game, considering they have USC at home next week?
Matt, great stuff as always, guys. We'll be right back with Robbie Avino with the next segment here. And remember the coupon code MMM49 at checkout for Mid-Major Max 7-day all access at sportsmemo.com. Short break, back with Robbie Avino.